Good evening, everyone. We are live. My name is Alita Madeira, and I'm the host for the OFFA 2021 Virtual Film Festival. This is my last night with the festival. Tomorrow, Tyler will be taking over the last night of the OFFA 2021 festival. A big thank you to all of our sponsors who've made this entire festival possible, specifically Visit Oakville for bringing our shorts in quarantine today. We have so many guests. I'm so happy we can chat with so many filmmakers and wonderful creatives. I just want to thank our filmmakers for being here today. We have an international crew today. It's so great. This is the one positive of having a virtual festival, that we can chat with you guys from around the world. We've got some coming from 7 a.m. to 1 a.m. to midnight. So we'll chat with you guys and I'll introduce everyone. A big thank you to the OFFA board members for all the work you do. You work tirelessly to bring us this amazing festival, all the pre-screening and the submissions and putting it all together. Wendy's here from the board. Tori's here from the board. Thank you so much, ladies. You guys do amazing work and we're so grateful to have you. And finally, I just want to thank our viewers. Thank you so much for tuning in, for buying those passes, for supporting the festival, and for showing up for the Q&As. We love having audience engagement. And I just want to remind you, you can pose your questions in the chat on the side here, and I'll get to see them and I can ask your questions to our filmmakers as well. So we'd love for you to get involved. And just a reminder, don't forget to vote for the Audience Choice Awards. So you can vote for your favorite short films and feature films, and each film gets its own score. So you can score all of them. So which is really great for the Audience Choice Awards. So we'd love for you to get involved and do that. And that's about it for my reminders. Now let's introduce our guests. We'll start with, in my order that I see here, we have Carl Hunter, who's calling in from the UK, who brought us More Than Time. Hello, Carl. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm tired because it's past my bedtime.
Yes, yeah, so it's 1:30 in the morning, 12:30 in the morning?
12:30.
12. Well, thank you so much for being here and supporting our festival again. You know, we got to chat a few years ago when you brought us Sometimes Always Never. Great film. Great to have you back. Carl Hunter is a British director, writer, and producer, and a former bass player with the English pop group The Farm. So we'll chat a bit about your film after I introduce everyone, but thanks for being here. Next, we have Christina Katsiakakis, who brought us In the Fishbowl. Hi, Christina.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's very exciting to be here.
Calling from Montreal, Canada. We've got a nice local Canadian film. Great work. We'll talk about your film. I loved the analogy of the fishbowl. I think we all could relate to that feeling for sure. Next, I want to introduce Chen Yap, who brought us the short film Shift, a Sheridan student and an Oakville local. Thank you, Chen, for being here. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Really excited to be here. Thanks for the warm welcome.
No problem. You are a student of Wendy's, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's correct.
Amazing. So you grew up in Singapore. You worked as an editor, and working in Canada, getting your film degree at Sheridan College. And now you're well on your way into filmmaking. So thank you for submitting your film, and thanks for being a part of the festival. We'll chat with you a little bit later. Next, I want to introduce Lee Chambers, who's calling from Regina, Saskatoon, who brought us Hell in a Handbasket. Hello, Lee. How are you?
Doing great. It's great to be here. I wish I was at the festival. I was there a couple years ago, where I was actually up as late as Carl when we drank some whiskey together. So it's nice to see him again.
Nice to see you.
Beautiful. All these memories coming back. You know, I'm so missing the in-person part of the festival. We've had a great time virtual. It's fun, but I mean, I miss faces. I feel like, you see everyone's eyes, but no more mouths. So I'm definitely missing that. Well, thanks, Lee, for being here. Lee, you're a professor in the film program. You have roots in Yorkshire. You were nominated for a Directors Guild of Canada for the Best Director. You've done so much for film, and thank you for coming here today. And I'm sure we'll get lots of questions for you. So we can learn a little bit more about your Helen a Handbasket that you brought us. Next, I want to introduce Helen Ispirian, who is calling from Germany, and you are joined with Karolina. Oh my God, please say your last name so I don't butcher it.
Juodelyte.
Juodelyte. It sounds
Yeah,
so
that's
beautiful the way you say it.
Lithuanian.
Thanks for being here, ladies. So Helen was the director for Here is Sweet Freedom, and Karolina, you are an actress and singer in the film. So
Singer. Organist.
Organist.
Yeah.
Organist. Thank you so much. It's really late for you guys, and we do appreciate you being here and sharing your very cool take on COVID in the future. So I can't wait to chat with you about that. Next, I'll introduce John Crowther, one of the directors for First Month, the New York City spooky town during COVID, and you are joined with Curtis Whitear, the other director on First Month. Thanks guys for being here. I mean, I think everyone knows New York City as the city that never sleeps, and you know, to see those shots of what New York City looked like during quarantine was wild. So we'll chat a little bit more about that. Couple more guests left. We have Mariana Gomez Ruiz calling from Savannah, Georgia, who brought us Saving the Caretakers. Thank you so much for being here and sharing such an emotional story. You know, if you guys haven't seen it yet, you really gotta see this one. Tugs on a lot of heartstrings. So thank you for sharing such a deep part of your soul.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.
Well, you know, we'd love to share the arts and we'd love to share all the talent. So glad you submitted for sure. And our last guest calling from real far away, all the way from Manila, the Philippines, we have Arby and Chen Laraño, our directors from As Our Sun Sets. Hello, thanks for joining us at 7 in the morning.
Mabuhay from Manila. Thank you for having us.
We are so grateful to have you. Okay, I think I've got through all of our guests. Hello and welcome. You know, I think this segment speaks for itself that there were so many artists and creatives who felt many things during quarantine and that you felt compelled to create. This can go for anyone who wants to go first. And where was that idea? When during the quarantine were you like, I'm so bored, I need to make a movie about exactly what's happening, about COVID related issues? Anyone want to go first? Go ahead, Mariana.
Well, for me, I was stuck in Mexico with my family, all in the same house, and we slowly started feeling sick, and I realized this is what I have to do. This is what I have to talk about. So I just put a camera there, and it sort of just happened. And the things were evolving, and more things kept happening. So it was just like I could not document it. I had to just like tell the story as it was happening. So for me, it was just the events, seeing what was happening, and just realizing I have to tell this story because this is too much.
And the title, Saving the Caretakers, I think, you know, everyone had their version of suffering during this past year. It's been really hard on all of us, but I think the caretakers is such a great perspective to come from, because there are people who rely on those caretakers and on those essential workers, and so many people who had these important roles, and your role as a sister and as a caretaker for your brother, and to just share your struggles that I think we all need to hear, because we are all struggling, and to hear more of these stories, it brings us closer together to remind us that we are the same. We're all human beings and we all are suffering, and you know, talking about it and having this awareness is such a great way. So thank you so much for sharing that. How is your family doing now?
They're doing better, slowly but surely.
Okay, and when were you able to come back to the US after staying there in Mexico?
I was able to come back about a year after, in February.
And my condolences for your uncle. I mean, to go through that and to document the entire thing. I mean, that just is such a touching moment to see how important family is. And I think there were so many themes to these shorts in this category, you know, the freedom, the fear, the unknown, the vulnerability of life, and to portray just, you know, how sacred family can be, and then how that can be, you know, medicine in itself. So thank you so much for sharing that. Why don't we move on to Carl Hunter. Carl, you brought us More Than Time, a short film about these voicemails. Tell us about these voicemails and where that idea came in.
Well, the idea came out of Liverpool in Britain is where I'm from and where I still live. And it's a city I know very, very well. In fact, you know, like the back of my hands, as the saying goes. And during that initial lockdown period, I was going into Liverpool, and for the first time in my life, it was empty, which was really odd, because normally it's very full and fairly busy and lively, and there's lots of sound. But now it was silent, and there were no people there, and it was a bit like a stage waiting for the play to start, as opposed to the opposite, which Liverpool's like one great big play, like most cities are, theatre, which you experience and you enjoy. And on this occasion, it was almost like the play was getting ready to open, but the actors and the orchestra hadn't quite arrived. And I found that quite odd. So I began to photograph it, and then eventually I ended up with a large number of photographs. And I thought there must be something I can do with them, but I wasn't sure what. And then I had this idea that if I could set up a way of recording voices and leave a question, which is, what do you miss? And then people could ring and say, well, I miss my mum, I miss the pub, you know, I miss football, I miss friends or whatever. And then maybe I'd have enough messages to cut together some kind of strange, abstract, ghost-like film. So that's where the idea came from. But it kind of, it evolved really. Sometimes a particular soundbite would take me in a different direction, and sometimes a particular photograph would take me in another direction. So that's where it came from, this idea of kind of, you know, when's the play going to start?
I loved all the different perspectives and, you know, the different things that people were missing. You know, and even I think we had shocking realizations of the things we missed doing.
Yeah.
I mean, travel, of course, and seeing friends and all that. For me, it was just like, I want to go somewhere other than the grocery store, because I feel like that was my only outing. And, you know, I become like kind of obsessed with the grocery store because it's the only place to go. But, you know, I at the end of your film with the line about More Than Time, tell us about that and how that became kind of the subject for the title.
Well, that was, I actually know whose voice that is. I should keep it secret, I suppose, but it's one I know very well. But he left a message where he talked about the time that we live in and how the time at that moment was a more than time. And I couldn't get that line out of my head. I just thought, what an incredible thing to say. And it would make a good title for a film. But coincidentally, I'd filmed, or rather I'd taken photographs of Liverpool Metropolitan Cathedral, which is quite a striking piece of architecture in Liverpool. And there's a very famous bell ring. It's quite a famous kind of tune. And I recorded that. So the film ends in this kind of, you know, cacophony of kind of bells. So it's it was nice. It's because the bells were almost like a musical full stop to the film. So that was quite good, really. But like most filmmaking, you set out with a plan, and often your plan's pretty good. But the exciting things about the exciting thing about making a film, I find, is that plan should alter all the time, because I think films are a journey of discovery. So I want to end up somewhere I didn't think I was going to end up, and that kind of excitement of experimentation is what attracts me to filmmaking. So the film I made may not necessarily be the film I set out to make, but that's where I ended up. But I think that's how it should be.
Absolutely. That's what life's about too, right? The journey, not the destination. And it's so great for other filmmakers and upcoming filmmakers to hear, your journey and that's part of making a film, the journey of it all. Maybe it'll change along the way, and that's okay. Speaking of time, good segue into to Helen Ispirian's film, Hear Us, Sweet Freedom. You're here with Karolina. Your film, what an interesting concept. So for those of you who haven't seen it, who are joining us in the Q&A, it's set in the future, and arts and culture are no more, and there's an extinct creature of artists who are still left, who are trying to keep art and culture alive. Helen, why don't you explain a little bit about this concept?
Actually it started with the music. So because we are musicians, we all are musicians from the main cast, and actually, I'm in the last time I worked in choirs, and then everything was shut after the shutdown, especially working in choirs. I was sure that it was not allowed for a long time, and so we had with Karolina and a second singer, we had a small ensemble, and we were preparing concerts for church services, because this was small, and so we I don't know how it was in Canada, but in Germany the church services were open for a long time, maybe even for all the time, when all the theaters or concert halls were closed. So actually only the church services were a possibility to perform live, and and then we met for rehearsal, and I started to change the text of one of the pieces which we rehearsed, and after this it became a whole film. So in shortly said here.
Well, I in Canada, I know that churches were closed pretty early on, so that we didn't have that reality of it. Sports were still on, but I love that you included that in the song there, that there's arts and where's the arts, but you still have sports on.
Yes.
That is important for some as entertainment, for sure, but art is also a form of entertainment, and why isn't that be giving time? And even gyms as well, it's for fitness, for mental health. Those were closed early on. So interesting how different countries we're doing things a little differently, but you just had such a cool take on our situation, and to look at the future, and how are we going to look back at COVID and the different behaviors that happened, and just I think with the arts and culture, how much we depend on the social part, going out, going to local markets, and embracing culture, and
true.
lacking that right now. Is Germany opened up a little bit more with cultures and cultural things happening a bit more?
Actually, it's like 2 weeks we are open, and before that it was really quite a hard lockdown. Again. Except churches was the one possibility for artists to make performances. I mean, the people in the church, the audience were not allowed to sing, but we, like, if there were one or two singer, it was okay. Then it was allowed, but not the people. And our concerts, it's not right now. They are working, but it's starting now a little bit. But there were some model pilot projects. But as for me, so I should have sung in a choir in an open air festival in Berlin, and it was cancelled, the festival, although it's open air even.
Well, slowly but surely, things are coming back. We do have our first audience question. Maybe John Crowther or Curtis Whitear from First Month, if you guys want to answer this. This is from Charlotte. What were the biggest challenges of making a film during the lockdown, with rules about social distancing on set? You guys being in the middle of New York City, maybe you can speak on that a little bit.
You want to go first, Curtis, or?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, our film was a little different. We basically just were hopping on buses, and so we weren't really, there wasn't a set. But what happened for us was, the COVID hit. It hit like really hard in New York at first, and we both lost all our work. And just going out and having this idea to shoot the experience of the lockdown, the first month of the lockdown, through the perspective of public transit and specifically the bus system. It was really cathartic just jumping on the bus and sort of capturing everything we could. And we were always masked up, and like the buses were mostly empty. And you see in the film that pretty much everyone riding the bus were like, there were people in scrubs, essential workers, and so we didn't have a big issue with distancing. So I guess that question maybe doesn't apply to our film quite as much, but
We
yeah.
were definitely conscious and concerned about the question of what defines essential work, and is filmmaking essential work, and is the very fact of us going on buses, which there's a part in the film where there's a sign that actively discourages people who are not essential workers from taking the bus. If this was a moral decision to make, I had it immediately, so I was maybe like a little less concerned about it. And we were very cautious with, as Curtis said, with the safeties. But we felt, while obviously in comparison to essential work, like keeping a metro system running, being a nurse, what have you, filmmaking is not as important as those things. But it did feel like it was essential to capture this moment in time, and how deeply unusual it was for New York. And some of the things that Carl said about Liverpool, I think, ring true to the wildly changed environment just overnight. And yeah, I think that we were in general not around too many people, just because of how desolate and completely wiped New York was.
Yeah, and like John and I immediately were good friends, and as soon as everything hit, we were like, okay, like how do we capture this in a documentary? And we went to Manhattan, which was just like a zombie apocalypse scene. I mean, there was just no one there. It was insane. And a bus drives by, and the bus is just completely empty except for the driver. And that visual was so striking. And that was the impetus for the entire project, was seeing that bus.
And the importance of these essential workers, seeing them while you guys are also doing important work, different work, but just important, as you said, to document this moment in time. And you guys did such a great job in showing just kind of zombie, exactly. Like I went downtown Toronto during the thick of it, and I was like, oh my God, is this like a weird holiday? Like it's so strange to see a big city like that. So thank you for sharing that. Onto the topic of essential workers. Chen Yap, you brought us Shift, your short film, talking about an essential worker living out of her car to protect her family. And you see these daily struggles that these, super important people were to keep society alive, essentially. Tell us a little bit about creating this film and having an essential worker, the topic of it.
Well, the way the origin of this film was it began in July. So in July, in where we lived in the GTA, I believe we were in the middle of opening up a little bit. So we suddenly had this window with which we could do something, which we could shoot something. So that's kind of this kind of where it all began. Because by the time we had been in lockdown for months, and then me and a bunch of friends, we really wanted to do something. And I guess the where, like, how the story sort of conceptualized is a little weird, in the sense that we were making it the what where it came from was, we started with this competition. There was this company in the UK that was making that was holding this competition, and that company, they were developing this app called Momentful, and it's the app that you see in the film where you send greeting cards. So that is a real app that the company was making. And then they were holding this competition where you had to make this short film, and it had to feature the app in some way. And so that's kind of where it started from, this very commercial premise, I guess. But then while I was thinking about a way to make this commercial not so commercial, I came across this news story in Ontario about this nurse about these nurse and these other essential workers, these other healthcare workers who were taking drastic measures to protect their families, they were like segregating their houses and like living out of cars and RVs and things like that. So from there, I kind of just put those two things together, and I figured a way to make those two concepts work together.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that tells the story. She was feeling that she had nowhere else to go that was safe, and her car was the only place to be safe. And she kind of put herself in this cage to protect herself. Christina, maybe we can talk a little bit about your film, In the Fishbowl. I mean, didn't we all feel like we were swimming in a fishbowl, back and forth, doing the same thing every day? I loved the coffee percolating sound. I mean, for me, that's like a great sound. I love the smell of coffee. I love the sound of coffee. But when you're every day, the monotony of, hey, our routine's not changing. It's the same every day. Tell us a little bit about that, and showcasing, monotony, but also keeping the audience so intrigued in the film.
First of all, let me just say that my reality had nothing to do with that, because I have 2 kids. So I was in a very loud,
different every day,
in a very loud environment where it was the opposite. I didn't have time to think. I couldn't think. It was I felt crowded all the time. But one thing I realized, talking to other people and observing other people, is that we, all of a sudden, the door kind of closed behind us, and we had to make do with the life we had created in our homes, in a way. So that is what brought all the what ifs. What about a woman who lives like this, or what about, and this is how this story came to be. What if a woman has nobody else? With her fish, and she wants to keep her routine because she thinks that's what's going to keep her going, but that doesn't really work,
And I love how she just kept trying to self-improve the fish, the bigger tank, the different rocks, the YouTube videos, the endless videos to improve the life. And even in a bigger tank, was it happy?
But what was very difficult, though, was that when I wrote the script, I was sure this was going to end, right? I was like, yeah, this is going to end. So when we were filming, it was a few days before we went back into lockdown in October. So it was very strange. It was a very strange time to write the film, but also when we came around to actually filming it, it was another strange time. So, and it continues to be a strange time until
I know.
We're
Can't even
talking
go
to-
to the movies, can we? But I love the perspective that you showed. Just, that was the reality of some. They didn't have anyone that there was a living person in their house. I had plants. I did have my boyfriend, but he was working a lot. But I felt comfort in my plants. I was like, they're living, right? It's still a living thing. Why don't we move over to Arby and Tin, all the way from the Philippines. You guys showed us a wonderful perspective and just a reality of for some. Was this was your grandmother or your mother that you were that was the subject of the film?
That was her grandmother.
Your grandmother, 92 years old. I mean, you did such beautiful images and scenes to, show, how solidarity can truly affect you. Why don't you talk a little bit about that and, her living alone at 92 years old and making her part of the film?
So, we just thought of making a story about her because we felt that people like them are voiceless at that moment. Because, as you can know, our country has one of the longest lockdowns. So, and she is a very social person. So we already know the contrast of what happened inside what she's thinking because she's fond of doing activities outside, going outside, and we were so used of uh, taking her out for dinners, and for sometimes before the lockdown, uh, she joins us when we do the groceries and things like that. And then the lockdown hit us. So we knew that there will be questions about why is it why is there's a lockdown and why can I go out. So for the voiceless like her, I think we decided to refocus the story on her because they the I think
How she survived.
yeah, how will she survive this pandemic. And the good thing about that is that the good thing about her is that she's very positive that this will be over soon, and she's still hoping that after the lockdown we will go out and we will eat out, we will do dinners outside, we will walk around some places. So we found her hope, and we found her hope, and we focus on that at the end of the film. So she with her age and with everything that's going around her, she she's not down. So that's what we really felt that the we really feel that we need to tell her story.
Actually, it's a point of view of someone who doesn't have any Facebook, any Instagram, who doesn't know how to use YouTube. But thankfully, she wants to experience video calls right now because of the pandemic.
Well, she seems so sweet. How's she doing now? Is she okay?
She's sleeping.
Is she is she excited about this film that she's a star?
Actually, she it's not thinking on her that it's a film. She's thinking that it's only a personal video for the family.
She'll make it big one day. She was so great. Well, thank you for sharing such a beautiful part of your story and about her story. And I think that's the beauty of this segment. You got to see the perspectives of so many who are experiencing, different things, some alone, some with many kids around, some being caregivers and, just doing our best. Lee Chambers, let's chat with you. We do have an audience question for you. Where did the inspiration come for the short film? Was it sci-fi and horror films? It was such an interesting take on COVID and what the fictional part that could happen.
Yeah, it was weird because after I finished the movie, it's being billed as a horror movie, it's billed as a sci-fi, it's billed as a drama, it's billed as a comedy. I don't really know where it fits. The funny story is that I actually wrote it before we even went into lockdown. So I wrote this where COVID was happening, in China, and there was a few cases of it that were coming this way. But looking ahead, they kept talking about the 1918 pandemic and how millions and millions of people died. And I don't think anybody imagined, over, 15 months ago or 14 months ago, that where we would be. And so I kind of wrote this story about what if, we're all alone, and we're all locked down, or we were going to be locked down, but what if one person had the power to control whether the rest of us lived? And so it was kind of written before we even went into lockdown. And, it was, a little bit of a laugh and a joke. And then nobody would have thought that we'd still be continuing going on in this process, that we'd go through waves of lockdowns. And I'm sure everybody here took the advice of the amazing and awesome American President Donald Trump, who said, let's just drink some bleach and it'll all be over. It'll be like it'll just disappear in April. Everybody thought that, I'm sure. No, but we've been watching the numbers. It's just horrific. Actually, it's interesting now when you look at the numbers, say in America, how 200-300 people a day are dying. And when you went to the beginning of the pandemic, when just like a dozen people died, it was horrific. Then we got into thousands, and now we're back to a couple hundred, and people are becoming numb to the fact that there are still people dying from this thing. And so, it was an interesting process. I wrote it before it started, and then and I thought it's like a wave. It'll just, pandemic quarantine comedies and films will kind of just, nobody will care. A year from now, we'll be on to something else, and we're still in it. And so I literally, this is the Canadian festival premiere of my movie, coming out at just the right time to thumb our nose at COVID, have a laugh, but also we need to appreciate the people who have lost their lives and people who have suffered. I actually did really well under COVID, being locked in. I actually got 4 writing gigs as a screenwriter, and made my Helen a Handbasket, and have one that's in financing for shooting next year. So there's a lot of good things for me that personally came out from dealing with COVID-19. Whereas in my film, I call it COVID-21. So there's the next pandemic that I kind of forecast.
Were you worried about the naysayers about like, oh, there always was a vaccine, they just never, this was, the government,
You're right. That's what's happening, right? All the conspiracy theorists are all over it. Who knows? I mean, there's a lot of I love that this whole group, this Shorts in Quarantine, is great because I was interesting. Congratulations to all the other filmmakers, because I'm seeing such a amazing perspective of how people are handling being in COVID, how they see the world under COVID, and to see, one of the things that's funny watching some of the ones from New York, or to Carl's journey in Liverpool, was months ago, like last year, I remember on YouTube, you could watch, people would just take a Zoom camera and just walk around Times Square and stuff like that. And I would spend time watching what's happening in other places, right? So I didn't feel so alone. I felt like I'm part of the world. So it's strange how we're so isolated, but yet Zoom has somehow, we've still managed to be connected to each other.
And aren't we lucky that this happened during a time where we have, FaceTime and things you can actually see people's faces. I remember when FaceTime was first a thing, I was like, the Jetsons, we're living in the Jetsons, the future. And it's pretty lucky that we can still see faces. I mean, even though it's through a screen, it's still better than the phone for sure. But I mean, all these stories showed us so many different perspectives, taught us different things, and just, it gives us the one thing I think humanity lacks sometimes, is compassion and just a little bit of kindness, because you don't know what someone else is going through in their situation. We've been running for quite a little bit of time, but I do want to ask maybe that someone wants to share something that you learned, or something that challenged you during the quarantine. Anyone want?
I realized there's some people I didn't miss.
You want to go, Carl?
I just say that thing about during quarantine where we all missed, our friends and family. And then as time went on, I began to think, oh, actually, there's quite a few people I don't miss at all. And in fact, if I never saw them again, it'd be great.
You're doing a better inventory of like who gets the time in my life, right? And I think it was an okay thing for us to analyze. Is this person depositing into my emotional bank account, or they just withdrawal or cut? Making those decisions. Anyone else want to share a story? Yeah, go ahead, Mariana.
I think, well, for me, being living usually away from home, being stuck at home with going back to my parents' house again, it was just so important for me to see the life they live with my brother and just what they do every day, what my brother goes through every day, what my mom goes through every day. And I just have I guess a better appreciation of what they do every day, of what their lives look like. And it just brought me so much closer together to my family that I don't think I would have had the experience to go through if it wasn't for a pandemic. So to some level, I appreciate that so much, that I was able to just come closer, and then we were just a team. We're a very, very tight team, which was very, very wonderful.
Your story was so sweet. I mean, the challenges and the struggles that you shared in your film, it seems like you're like an older woman who's gone through these mature hardships, and I'm sure that has changed you and made you grow in a different way. But it was the reality of so many. But I having you have a brother with who's on the spectrum. My mom works for a school with special needs, and that was a vulnerable group that I always just had such a place in my heart. These parents who are with these, children full time, and then at least when they go to school, there's some respite. And when schools were closed, I couldn't even imagine that the full time, there's no break for mom and dad or siblings who are in that situation. And to see a little glimpse of the struggle, I'm sure just humbled you and humbled me to see, someone go through that, and someone so young. So you're such an inspiration. You had such a sweet demeanor, and you're so selfless, and you just wanted to, take care of your brother and be there for your parents. And I'm sure they are so grateful for you. You shared such a beautiful story. So thank you. Does anyone else want to share? Maybe some, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Arby and Chen?
If I may just add that throughout this pandemic, we realize how important family and filmmaking to us. So actually the concept was like Lee, we already had this idea of doing this journey to the 100 years of our grandmother. So because of the pandemic, we just decided let's just make it now, because we don't know what's in the future. And I also have my own grandmother, but she lives elsewhere. So during the pandemic, we really feel that we really need to make films, and we need to make it about the people or about the things that we really cared about. So in a way, her grandmother is also a representation of my grandmother. And we just felt that in this time, in this kind of situation, just do what you love and just spend the time with the people that you really care about. So maybe that's for us.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think everyone saw their own grandparent through the eyes of your grandmother, Tin. An elder living at home where, the roles reverse, they were once your caretaker and now you are theirs. And seeing that, it is really transformative. So thanks for sharing that. It was a beautiful film. John, you were gonna share a story as well?
Yeah, it's less something that I learned but I already knew, but put it more into perspective. the tremendous disparity between what we were seeing, particularly in Times Square, in terms of the no one has a job, there's no one on the streets, and the relentless American advertising that never stopped, and it not only didn't stop, but it co-opted the pain and suffering that everyone was going through and used it to sell things. And you suddenly, for example, I don't think Amazon or UPS has ever done a commercial that's all about the people that carry the boxes from here to there. It's all about, like, you're going to get your boxes so quickly. It's not, these are the workers who are doing it. And you suddenly had every advertisement in Times Square saying, support our essential workers, and brought to you by AT&T and American flag AT&T. And there's a point in the film where we're driving through empty Times Square, and there's a huge sign that says, expand the vision, think big. And then it's just trying to sell you like a $2 million apartment in Times Square. And that there was just this unbelievable disparity between relentless American advertising and consumption, and in a post-apocalyptic seeming world. Like, if you had a zombie movie, but the only thing that remained was you should buy more iPhones and just continue to consume and consume and consume. And it felt at a certain point that there was just this, the disconnect between also the essential workers and the people that had to stay at home, and the people that stayed at home sort of did that. Amazon did very well. More people bought more and more things, and the people we were filming in the film most of the time were the ones that had to be out there constantly and go to work every day, and we're seeing this just onslaught of advertising that was also pretending to support them, but not doing so in any sort of material way. And any sort of criticism of the wonderful United States that you could possibly come up with was just so much starker during this. And the veil has all been off for quite a long time, but it was just so clear the degree to which not only will the extreme consumption just go on forever, but that any tragedy, anything like that will be co-opted to just continue to sell you things. And that was one of the things that struck me the most. And at the end of the film, when we show the people cleaning the buses in the hazmat suits, that was something that you were never shown, because happy people carrying Amazon boxes from one truck to the next and smiling at you with American flag visuals is the extent to which they will show what's happening with the essential workers behind the scenes, but no one wants to see people in hazmat suits cleaning the buses. And it made all of the problems with the United States, and probably by virtue of the United States, much the world as a whole, far clearer than they even were before, which was very clear.
I think it brought class division. It made class division very visible. In Britain. We had the essential workers, the lowest paid people in Britain were out day to day, either saving lives or risking their lives. Whereas the middle classes in Britain were actually sat at home wondering which spare room to do a Zoom call from, and is their spelt bread cooked?
Yes.
That's what became very, very, very visible. It was a pandemic for whom the working classes were far, far more affected, and not rewarded for in the end.
The other thing, the one thing I find interesting is what they considered, how different places classified essential as different things. So, you know, it's like you can't go to a restaurant or you can't do certain things because it's too dangerous. But, you know, you can go to the liquor store and buy booze. And so that worker has to be there to sell you booze and to stock the shelves because that's considered essential. And so it's a great conversation. And I just want to reiterate to everybody, do not drink bleach, okay? Don't do it.
Thank you.
And don't do drugs unless you need something. Unless you have a headache. Enjoy it.
I
need a phone charger. My battery light's just come on saying low battery. I'm going to have to get a charger very quickly. I'll disappear for 30 seconds.
Don't worry, we are nearing the end. Our final film of the night is just begun, so I think we are going to call it. Thank you everyone who came here today, who showed up all over the world. We are so grateful to have you. Thank you, Lee Chambers, coming all the way from Regina, who brought us Helen a Handbasket. Thank you, Christina Katsiakakis, who is calling from Montreal, who brought us in the Fishbowl. Thank you so much. Thank you to Carl Hunter, who brought us More Than Time, calling from the UK. Thank you, Chen Yap, who brought us Shift, a Sheridan local. Thank you, John Crowther and Curtis Whitear for bringing us First Month. And thanks for calling from the US and from Mexico. Thank you, Mariana Gomez Ruiz, for calling from Savannah, Georgia, who brought us As Our Sun Sets. Thank you, Helen, and thank you, Karolina, for being here with us all the way from Journey, who brought us Hear Us, Sweet Freedom. And thank you, Arby and Chen, for bringing us As Our Sun Sets all the way from the Philippines. Thank you, everyone. We are so grateful to have you here to share your stories and to share perspectives, just, you know, bringing humanity together. We are all the same. We are all, you know, we all need the same stuff: love, sunshine, you know, water and food and film. Don't we all need film?
And theaters.
And theaters, yes, let's get those theaters open. So thank you, Visit Oakville, for being the sponsor today. Thank you to our viewers. Don't forget to vote for your films. You can vote for the short films and the feature films. So please go ahead and do that. Signing off, my name is Alita. Thank you everyone for being here. Have a good night.
Thank you,
everyone.
Thank you.
Go to sleep, everybody who needs to.
Yeah, good night.